And now for something completely different. Today, I am going to be joined by my friend John Gress, who's a great photographer from the Chicago area. If you don't follow him already, I highly recommend that you check out his Instagram at John Gress Media and also his YouTube channel. There's going to be a link in the description to that and also up here somewhere. So I asked my private Facebook group called Kickstart Your Headshot Business to submit some images for me to critique. And by the way, if you're interested in that group, you can get in that group if you purchase and view and study my online course, Kickstart Your Headshot Business. It's a support group for students of my class. And so if you're interested, no strings attached, whatever, you can just follow the link in the description and use the code YouTube at checkout to save 25%. So anyhow, I asked the students in that group if they would submit some headshots that I could critique on this video. Now, they sent me a variety of things, including sort of head and shoulders headshots and then waist up business portraits, some really cool stuff that are great, but could use a little bit of tweaking. And so since John does a lot of this work just like I do, we are going to get together and help by constructively criticizing these images. I think that that's the key. We're not here to beat anybody up. We just want to help, and hopefully you will glean some tips from that as well. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, thank you, John, for being here. I know that you are very, very busy, locked down in Chicago, and have very little time. But
I foot of snow.
Yes, and I wanted to compliment your turtleneck today, and I do want to confess to you that I almost I was going to run over to Target and try to buy a turtleneck because I was taking a shower this morning thinking about this. Don't read anything into that, but I was taking a shower thinking about this today, like what we were going to do, and I said, I bet you $100 that John's going to wear a turtleneck.
Just trying to stay warm, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a balmy 65 degrees Fahrenheit here in Orlando, Florida today. All right. So what I want to do is to bring up some of these images for the people in my Facebook group. And I picked these out of all the submissions specifically because I think they're all good, but have some pretty minor and even some obvious tweaks that could take them to the next level. I think the photographers who took these are doing good, solid, professional work, but with a little bit of tweaking, they could really take it up to the next level. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, because you're such a good technician and have such a terrific eye for detail. So we'll bring up the images, and then, you know, you'll go ahead and weigh in, and then if there's anything that I think, I'll clean up after that, and then we'll have a good time, and hopefully the makers of the images and other people watching this will get something really cool from it. Sound okay? It's okay. We'll leave it in the video.
That's my alarm to make sure that I'm doing this.
Oh, good. Well, you know what? Mission accomplished. Here we are. All right. This first image is from Mike. It's a pretty strong professional, and I wouldn't call it a headshot, more of like a business portrait of a guy in his office with like a library in the background. And so, you know, I think this is really good, but could use some tweaks. And with your eye for detail, tell me what you think about this image and how you would improve it.
Well, thanks for that, Gary. I know you're very skilled too, so I'm sure this will be a fun critique. For this particular video, I would have just used a strip softbox behind him over his right shoulder so that it would have just brought him off the background a little bit, and I would have gelled it tungsten. I think the light on his face is great, and the overall composition and the balance between the lighting that's on his face and the overall image is great. I just think a little tiny tweak with that light back there, maybe about 2 or 3 stops darker than his face, would have just sort of faked the light coming from that lamp and brought it into the shot and just sort of made him stand out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's probably some great advice, and I think that the color shift into the shadow side of his face gets a little orange, and that fill could have mitigated some of that and taken control of the color balance in the room a little bit. I only have one thing to add to this is if you, and this is nitpicky, but this is the job, right? So like you go into the top right of the image, and in the reflection on the glass of one of those portraits, you can catch the softbox in it. And so when you're shooting in a scene with lots of reflective surfaces, I think be a little more meticulous about making sure that your light sources aren't showing in them. And that's hard, but you can change the angle of the lights, do something similar, even back them up a little bit. And just those little things you can polish. And also, I guess you could always fix that in Photoshop, which is, you know, it's a pretty small thing. And the verticals of that bookshelf are just slightly like 1 degree like tilted to the side, and I probably would correct that in an image like this just for the sake of detail.
And I have a video coming out soon that's all about grids, and this actually would have been a situation where a grid would have helped out, because oftentimes putting a grid on that main light could block that light from being seen by the picture frame in the background. And I guess the ironic thing is I didn't even include that as an idea in my video, so maybe I need to go back and edit it. But overall, I thought this was a really strong image. It just needed these, little micro adjustments to make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got one more from Mike, who sent in several images, and I picked this one for a specific purpose because I think it's very nearly there for me. Great headshot of a young guy in a black suit on a charcoal background. What do you make of this image? Like, it's close, and how would you tweak it?
I just thought that the hair light was a little bit too strong, and this is a problem that I think every photographer struggles with.
Yes.
And that is just that it's hard dialing in that hair light exactly. And sometimes if you end up getting it to go through to their scalp, you end up in the situation. So just pulling it back would have been the only thing. And of course, I like the image overall. It's just this little thing would have made it a little bit better, just to pull that hair light down in exposure a little bit.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly. I thought that in addition, probably to just backing it off a little bit. And by the way, your most recent YouTube video was about hair lights, and it made me mad because I was literally I have a whole list of ideas for YouTube videos, and one of them was how to use a hair light properly, and then you beat me to it, you jerk. But I would probably even take the hair light back a couple of inches rather than presenting it so much on the top of the head and shoulders, so it's a little more like a glow that separates. Like, I almost like to use a hair light so that you have to really look for it to see that it's there in a lot of cases. Like, it's not necessarily, in my opinion, a best use of a hair light isn't to just, add a really hot edge to everything. It's to make a two-dimensional medium a little more three-dimensional so that it pops off a little bit, so you can see where the subject ends and the background begins and get those details. All stuff I learned from your video, by the way.
Well, that's funny, because I think that's a really good idea, and it would have saved me the last time I made this mistake, because I probably didn't think about moving it back. So I think that's a really great idea.
So this next image comes from JD, and I think this is a really strong, it almost looks like a groom portrait, but it could also be a business portrait for something more editorial. Great 3/4 length, black and white. Tell me what you see when you look at this and what you would do to improve it.
I think this image is really strong overall, and I had to look at it for a while to kind of find something that I could say constructively would make it better. And I think that might be like the bottom of his shirt where it meets his pants. And so a lot of times, I'll just think about having them close the top button of their jacket, and that way it'll bring together a really strong V right here. And that might have avoided seeing that unrefined edge at the bottom. I guess if you really wanted the jacket open, maybe you could just Photoshop a stronger line down there. I'm not saying for sure that it would work, but maybe it would work.
You do such great styling in your work. I thought I knew you'd go right to it, which is great. So yeah, win for me. Yeah, this is definitely a situation where photographers, you have to take some responsibility for the clothing in a shoot. You can't just say the client brought nothing. If you get to the point where you're in a camera room with somebody or on a shoot for a client and the clothing is a problem, then unless the client is a real dummy, like you didn't prepare them properly for the shoot, and when you look at the image, you should get your lighting, generally get your post set, and then look at your client's wardrobe and see how the clothes have fallen and if there's anything you need to improve. And I know that you're very meticulous about how clothing sits, so I picked that one just for you. Thanks, JD, for that submission. The next image is from Jennifer. I think it's a really strong pose, a great professional woman image, and a couple of tweaks could take this over the top, so tell me what you see.
Well, I like the light that's on her face, and I think the framing and background, all that works well together. The only thing I'm thinking perhaps is that the kicker or edge light over on her left side is just a little too strong, and so I just would have dialed that down a little bit. What did you think about it?
It's interesting. I did notice that, and I thought that you definitely want to bring that light down a little bit so that you're not blowing anything out, because the edge light, depending on what you're going for, and this could be controversial, the edge light shouldn't necessarily be stronger than the key light. Sometimes that works, like if you look at a lot of promos for like Fox shows like Dancing with the Stars and stuff, they love those really hot edge lights. But for something like this, I think it's a little distracting and toning that down to stop. But the other thing that I noticed was the catch lights in her eyes. Now, it looks like maybe like a Westcott eyelighter or that glow arc light reflector, probably with a silver cover on it. And this isn't a hard and fast rule, but me personally, I don't love an image when the catch light in the bottom is brighter than the catch light in the top. And I think it gives it kind of a ghoulish quality. And although it can look really cool and glamoury, every once in a while you'll also get clients that react very negatively to strange catch lights. They like, you know what I mean? And so
and they have
for an
blue
image
eyes usually.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Fair point.
No,
for me,
I don't know. Do you see this, that people that have blue eyes usually are very sensitive to flash?
I've never noticed that before,
Okay.
but I have heard it. But I noticed that babies are usually sensitive to flash, but I don't photograph babies no more, so I'm not worried about that. The remedy for this, for me, I would probably use the white cover because I love that modifier and it's great for headshots. It does a lot of heavy lifting as far as fill light, but using the white cover instead of the silver will give you a lot more control. Bust that silver out for those times when you're really trying to make those catch lights equivalent in the top and bottom, and I think that you'll get a lot less pushback from your clients when that shape of that modifier accentuates the eye without overtaking the image. Next image coming from Mark. This one is super bright and colorful on an orange background, and I think it's really dynamic and interesting, but there are a couple of things we could tweak to improve it, so I will let you tell me what you thought first.
Yeah, I think it's great too. I think that the tweak I would have made would just be to make the main light on her face a little bit brighter. It just seemed like everything else, the background, the kicker, and everything were exactly right, but that main light was just maybe like half a stop too dark, give or take. So
yeah, I agree with the. Yeah, totally. And the main thing is I think that the composition, the expression are really great. I like the use of color. That's a really eclectic color palette in the image. But absolutely, in most cases, every rule can be broken. There's always a place to break it. But if you're talking about a professional headshot, for the most part, you want the face to be the thing that's getting the most light. It's all about you doing business online, really, and connecting a name with a face, and that face has to be the star of the show, and everything else in the image should be a supporting actor. You know what I mean? And so I completely agree. That's really the only critique I had for this image. I thought the posing, expression, and styling were really strong. Finally got one more image for critique from Jeremy, who sent this in, and I picked this image because I really like it. And this one is hard to critique. And so I thought that I would show this to you, shooting at the level you shoot at, that you might have some good insight on this image. Beautiful young woman, blue eyes, blue background, really nice color top. So you and I discussed a couple of the images ahead of time, not too much detail, but you pointed out like this one's going to be hard to critique because it's really good. So, but I think there's always something more you can do. So tell me what you think.
I'm gonna kick this back to you to have a critique on it because I actually can't find anything bad about this. So what do you think?
This is a really great image. I think it's lit really well. It's almost straight on, looks kind of like a garage style lighting, and it serves her really well because she's got great cheekbones. And I actually learned that from you, that you pick a lot of the models you work with based on how you think that their face is going to work, how well their face lights. And I think that certain features lend to really good lighting patterns. So, it's just a very appropriate, light, airy, and vibrant headshot. I had a couple of quibbles just with the crop. I didn't see the original crop. Maybe this is the original crop, but I would like to see a little more of her upper body. Like, it's not quite into the shoulder and it's not quite showing her. I think the turn of the body could use an adjustment by a couple of degrees. And I'd like to see the image doesn't have balance. It's weighted very heavily to the left. And so if I've got the head in the top left corner, I usually like to have the body in the bottom right corner. And I think that an image is always about balance, and you should look at an image visually, and if everything in that image is assigned a value of how much it weighs in your mind, the image should have balance, or it should be intentionally way out of balance. So I'd like to see the composition and a slight change of pose just to add a little more balance to this image. It's very left heavy. And also just in the retouching, or in camera, or with a little hairspray, just a tiny bit more control on those stray hairs, I think would just take this to the next level.
So this might get me in trouble, but was this sort of like,
oh, please,
what you were thinking, like this sort of turn? And
yeah,
then,
just to bring her far shoulder, that would be camera right, her left shoulder, a little more into the frame. Because, you know, there's that classic modeling pose where you're like to the shoulder. And I always think that looks great because you get to see their face and their back. How do I look? Do I look good? Do I look good?
Pretty
and then
good.
Just, right. And so, you know, we do this a lot in photography. We turn people out of the light, out of the camera to sort of minimize their body and make them look smaller. And I don't think that she needs it. And I would like to see that other shoulder a little tiny bit. I think it would add more depth to the image and give her a little more presence in the image. It looks like, I would imagine, just a guess, that in this sequence of images, that there is a stronger capture somewhere either before or after this. And that would just be my, you know, that's based on zero information. But I don't think she's quite in the frame in a way that makes her the hero. And so, I always try to, if you're taking an individual portrait of someone, figure out, you okay there, bud?
You were supposed to keep going so we could cut it out.
I'm still learning how to do this.
I'm sitting over here going like, okay, I can't do this. I can't.
Just holding it in, but you can't hold a cough. You can make a sneeze go away. You can't make a cough go away. It just gets that critical mass as it comes out. So thanks for turning away from the microphone.
You know, right, because you're supposed to turn your head. Yeah. So yeah. I didn't cough into my elbow like we're supposed to now.
My 3-year-old knows to cough into her elbow. So, you know, we got to get that. It's the pandemic that we live in. Otherwise, we'd be doing this in person. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I got on that one. I'd love to see some more critiques. Maybe you could do this with me another time.
That would be great.
Do even some more images. And your expertise is much appreciated. I hope I get to be in the same room with you sometime here in the near future. That would be really cool. I can go to Disney together or something like that. But
whenever you're ready.
If you don't, yeah. As soon as I get the shot,
right.
I'm going straight to the mouse. So anyway, if you don't follow John on Instagram, it's at John Gress Media, and also I'll put a link to the YouTube channel up here and in the description. He's got a fantastic YouTube channel, especially if you're interested in refining your lighting. I don't think anybody I know quite has a grasp of that refinement about taking your lighting to the next level. And he can take 8 lights and make it look like 1, and take 1 light and make it look like 8, and I just think that's awesome. So John, thanks so much for doing this with me, and let's do it again.
That sounds great. Thanks, Gary.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Liking is the most important thing. If you didn't know that about the YouTube algorithm, pretty much nothing matters except that, like,
really?
Smash the like button. Oh, I hate it when people say that. Smash the like. Tenderly caress the like button. Just make sure that it works. And don't forget to check out John's YouTube channel too. All right, we'll see you in the next video.
All right, take care.